Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Village Law SEQFC preview show. My name's Darren. Thank you for joining us this week. We had a week off last week. I went and saw some cup games and had a really good night out at Maroondah. First time there. I hope you saw the little write-up that I did. I might do another one tonight after the show on another club that I went to last weekend. But we've got some guests tonight. Let's have a chat to those guys. All right, introducing our guests. We've got Tony Julkas. G'day, Tony.
Good evening, everyone. How are we?
Good. Good to have you with us. We've got the Ipswich Express. Liam Parslow back with us. G'day, Liam.
Hey, how are you? Hope you're well.
Good. From Ormeau Football Club. Do you call yourself down the coast, Nathan?
Yeah, absolutely. We play in the Gold Coast competition, mate. So, well, South Coast, I suppose. But, yeah, Gold Coast is the most northern suburb of the Gold Coast, if we talk council regions. So, definitely. I wouldn't coach in Brisbane, Darren.
It feels like you're halfway to the coast. That's just me being offensive, I guess. And also joining us is the Brisbane Roar Youth coach. You had a big 1-0 win over Olympic on the weekend. It's Chris Grossman. G'day, Chris.
Hey, Darren. How you going? Hey, lads. How you going?
Hey, Chris.
Good. Great to have you with us, Chris. Now, we might start with you, mates. I'm very interested to get your take on the setup there at the Roar Youth. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, is this your second season coaching this team?
Yeah, second season, but fifth. I think I'm going to my 7th year at the club, so it's it's been an interesting journey to date. So,
how did you start 7 years ago?
It was actually a chance phone call from James Robinson, who was the then youth team head coach. He was looking for an assistant coach, and at that time I was down in Victoria, as a lot of good Queenslanders are at the moment, applying the trade down there. So I was down there after my time finished up in the A-League, and sort of decided that was the right time to look at my next career choice, and that was coaching. And James took me under his wing for 2.5 years, and obviously the academy started up in that time, and I was lucky enough to sort of work my way through that, and here we are today. So it's it's been a very eventful journey, but I'm learning a hell of a lot.
Excellent. Now, before we get to your results and all that sort of thing, I just want to talk or ask you about your selection of players. How does a player get to become a member of the Royal Youth Academy?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it's one that's probably changed over the last probably 6 months, 12 months, Darren, to be honest with you. Before, we've obviously our setup's changed dramatically recently, as everyone's probably aware. I think it's disappointing losing under 13s to under 18s from the football Queensland NPL pyramid, but that's a club decision, and we fully understand it and the reasons behind it. But for us, we're looking at different avenues and different ways that we can continue to keep eyes on young Queensland talent now, and continue to provide them a pathway. I think there are a few things probably over the last 6 months that probably made things a little bit more difficult for us to develop a clear pathway, but we've put some little things in place over the off season that we're hopeful that this season we've maintained a lot of the bulk of the good talent from our program. It was very difficult to try and put 120 players into 41, which we've got at the moment. So there's some disappointing stories of those that have left our program, and we're trying to keep as close an eye on them as we can, but not just them, but other players that are putting their hand up and still wanting to be part of the Brisbane Roar program. And we're hopeful that over the next period of time we can monitor them and look to potentially bring them back into our pathway. If they are performing well and they are identified. So it's been different, Darren. It's very hard for me to sort of say this is the pathway and this is how we do things, because there's been so much change. But we're working on things behind the scenes at the moment. I mean, Football Queensland have been quite good to us at the moment, inviting Owen and myself into their talent ID programs, and that's where a lot of our kids that have left the Brisbane Roar Academy have gone to. So we're lucky enough to still have that relationship quite strong, and we're going to keep building on that as we go forward.
So let's assume you're still there next season. You go to one of these talent ID, they're carnivals, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yep. And you
Yeah.
see a player and you think, right, that's the one that I want. What happens from there?
Yeah, it's a collaboration with clubs. I think, between Graham Fife, Owen Baker, and myself, and other people within our club network, I'd like to think that our relationships with people or key people within clubs is quite strong. Like, we're in regular contact with a lot of local clubs in regards to what players that they recommend to us, and obviously Football Queensland, as I said, bring a lot into those talent ID sessions, which are held on Thursday night. So we get to have a look at sort of the next best in line to come in, and we collaborate with the clubs, and we obviously want to have an open, transparent, and good relationship with clubs. So we would then approach the club and say, hey, listen, we would like to have a look at X, Y, and Z over the next couple of weeks, or during our preseason, we'd have probably a look at them over a month to 6 week sort of period, and we make a decision whether they were a good fit for our program, or whether we were a good fit for what they wanted to do. I think it's probably a two-way street in that regard. It's not just always, we want the best young players to come in. The best young players have a choice to make whether they want to come into our program or not. And if that's the right environment for them, I hope that, we have that right program, we have that sort of right setup that they can say, yes, this is the next place for me. But, they obviously have to make a decision as well. And we give them a good look at our environment and see if that's right for them. And hopefully that is so.
So obviously you're looking for natural ability, but what are the other things that you're looking for?
Yeah, it's not an easy commitment in our program, Darren. I think as we try and make it easy as possible. Like we're 3 sessions a week, and we want to try and move into a 4 session a week. Obviously, we want to try and set that benchmark of being the best NPL club in Queensland. Like we're the only professional club, so we have to keep pushing the bar and trying to raise that as high as we can with what control we do have. So we're going to keep pushing as much as we can. It's 3 nights a week at the moment, and by the time the age groups that we're looking at, you've got GPS school football to add into that as well. And some of the kids are potentially doing between 7 and 10 sessions a week. So that's something which might not fit into their family structure, to their structure within schooling and that sort of stuff. So there's a lot to consider in that age group. So it's probably not as easy, and every case isn't exactly the same. It's probably a case by case basis, and us managing and helping provide as much support as we can through those sort of years of schooling and moving into hopefully professional football for a lot of young kids.
Have you had some kids through that they've just gone, they've been so single-minded that they've stopped caring about school? It's just all about football, and you have to go, hang on. Let's think about this.
Yeah, definitely. I think Jordan Courtney was probably the first one, and he was one of the first I had as I think it was under 18s coach of the academy at the time. He literally got to grade 10. He said, I don't want to go to school anymore. And it was a battle that Warren and I had to fight at the time. We're like, school's important. And he was just so adamant that wasn't sort of a pathway he wanted to take. He was a professional footballer, and while he did that, we supported that, and tried to put as many parameters in place that we could to help him develop a plan B. But obviously his story now is sort of kicked on, which is fantastic to see. He's sort of had to go to Poland and come back and be given an opportunity. But I would always encourage that young professional aspiring footballers develop a plan B, and school's an important part of that.
Do you have any stats on the number of kids that actually go on and have a professional career from the ones that you've had in your squad?
Yeah, I think in the 7 years that I've been there, we've had 21 players from our program go and play one professional A-League game. So within that, there's plenty of names to rack off. We've got it in our gym at the academy, which we're very proud of. I'm delighted to see so many names. Like you go back, Jay Barnett, Daniel Leck, Jordan Courtney, Isaac Powell, Macklin Freck. Like there's a lot of good young Queenslanders that have come through, although they might not have played 50 or 100 games. They've all got different stories as to sort of how they got to where they got to, and why they got to where they got to. So that's always good for our boys to see, because I don't think, once you get to the Brisbane Roar, I don't think there's one pathway to make professional football. I think, there's multiple avenues, and everyone on that board has got a different story to tell, which is good for our boys to see.
And let's be clear about that. Although 21 is a fantastic figure, and congratulations on that, that's probably 21 out of what, about 300, 400?
Yeah, definitely. By the time you go through the players, like we've got another photo on the wall, Darren, of the first intake of Brisbane Roar players that came through the academy when John was coaching, and Drew first started the academy, I think that's 8 years ago now. And there's probably only a handful of players still left at our club, which is disappointing, but there's still a few floating around, or a fair few floating around the NPL, which is great to see. Football's not an easy profession to crack professionally. So it's one which we're there to continue to support. I've got a lot of good and close mates that are still come through our program that are now within NPL systems, and we keep in regular contact. And it's fantastic to see them still playing football. I think when we look at today's sort of world and society, football keeps a lot of people happy, and I think by them staying in the game definitely helps other young players like they were once develop. So yeah, it's great to see.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Chris. That's some really great insights there. Now let's talk about your current squad. What's the youngest and the oldest in there at the moment?
So we've got I think Quinn McNichol's our youngest at the moment. He's 15 or 16 at the moment, so he's our youngest. But our oldest is 21. So it's a decent sort of gap between youngest to oldest within our squad. But as you sort of mentioned at the start, Darren, like this year's thrown up a few challenges, especially to us as coaches. Like it's a very different club to run than any other NPL club this year, obviously, because we don't have that underpinning support to feed on through periods of the year where we might have injuries or GPS football and that sort of thing. So we worked quite closely with Football Queensland at the end of last season to sort of bring forward a plan which we thought was going to get us through the year, and we're still confident we can do that. But as we said as well, like obviously players can make decisions whether they want to be part of our program or not, and we've had a couple of leave, unfortunately. So that'll provide opportunities for other players, and we'll just have to be smart of how we recruit, because ultimately our program is about developing opportunities to play. But it's a fine line when you don't have the underpinning support of the 18s to 13s. But they're the cards we're dealt, and I'm looking forward to the challenge, as are other coaches in the system.
And our understanding, looking through the competition rules this year, is that the side can be relegated. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely one that's been made clear. I think at the end of last season there were whispers that was happening, but it's interesting. I think sort of it removes the safety net, which is a difficult challenge, but at the same time every other club has to deal with it in Queensland. So we're excited for that challenge. At the end of the day, Darren, if we're good enough and consistent enough, I think we can do everything that we're planning on doing with or without relegation. So we've got some exciting young kids coming through. I think the first 5 rounds has definitely shown that we're going to be competitive this year, and we're going to give it a real fight. So I'm excited for the remainder of the season and what challenges are still to come, because it's only been 5 rounds and there's been a lot that's happened in 5 rounds. So let's look to see what's happening for the rest of the year.
And let's play devil's advocate on that. Surely your measure as a coach is adding to that number of, adding to the 21 players that play in the A-League, right? Surely that's your measure. It doesn't matter if you come 2nd, 3rd or 4th in this league. It's got to be producing players, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing, like growing up, Darren, I think coming through, the system of AIS and QAS and that, like coming through the AIS system, especially, I think the last two years that was open, I was, fortunate enough to be part of that program. But a lot of that was developed around sort of the technical and tactical aspects of football, but it didn't really teach me how to win. And as much as, development is balancing winning and understanding how to win, I mean, it's probably finding that balance for us now about developing technical and tactical players, but also understanding how to win. I think, I'm still learning that as a coach. I'm still trying to figure out, what is that right balance? Like, we want our boys to play, we want our boys to show what they can do, but I think understanding sort of, the the bigger picture part of it. Of we don't want to be round 10, round 6, sort of round 4 having to chase points to stay up. We want to come out early, come out flying, and I think the first 5 rounds have shown that. We've been unlucky in a couple of games not to pick up results, but I think on the weekend was a reward for the boys' hard effort, and hopefully that continues to show over the next couple of rounds. I mean, there's no easy games in NPL this year or any league. Every team on their day can beat anyone, so you've got to be ready for a fight.
And I think we saw evidence of that playing to win on the weekend. I might bring you in here, Tony. We saw the Raw players taking the ball to the corners at the end of the game, where perhaps in seasons past they might have tried to score another goal, but they were protecting the scoreline.
They seem to be 2 yards quicker than Olympic goes through the game anyway. So I don't think Olympic hardly ever threatened. So yeah, I don't know, mate. I think there's some clubs there, and Chris testified to that. There's some clubs there that are in a lot worse position that the Raw Youth are. I thought the Raw Youth played decent football on the weekend. Should have won by more.
Yeah, it was interesting, Tony, you mentioned that. Like, I'll look back and I've watched highlights today and the last couple of days, and there's probably key moments within that. You probably go, okay, well, Olympic did have their chances, but a lot of that probably came down to a lot of our young, naive moments where we could have been a little bit better structured and that sort of thing. But they've got a lot of good players in their squad. I think the Daniel X and the drivers and the Lyndon Fars, like, they had opportunities on the weekend to wrestle that game back in their favour. Unfortunately for them at the moment, it's not sort of falling for them. But you look at Power, the same thing as well. Like, you go on a run. I think Ben said this on one of his shows earlier in the week. Like, all you need to do is go on a run of 5 games where we pick up points, or you have a few good wins, and you're back in the 4 again. So it's sort of that close at the moment where you can sort of wrestle yourself into the top 4 or out of the top 4, and we're going to hopefully keep trying to pick up as many points as we can to stay positive.
Winning is a habit. Losing can also become a habit.
Yeah.
And the next 4 or 5 weeks for a certain club, there's some tough games coming up.
Yeah, no, it is. It's tough. I think you look at the fixture list probably 12 months ago, 24 months ago, Tony, and I think a lot of people probably go, okay, well, we can go on a run. And we said that last year. We went on a run of 3 or 4 games where we just picked up points, and then you go into games like Power and Lions and Knights and those guys at the top, and you go, okay, well, we're coming into those games with full of confidence because we've got 3 or 4 wins under the belt. But this year you've got to really work hard week to week to go, okay, well, we're going to get those points, because if you're not, every week's a cup final to try and get into a position where you're some sort of safe.
Yeah, so you've just played against them, and you can give me an honest opinion. Can you see them in their next 4 games beating Lions, Power, Gold Coast Knights?
It's a tough ask.
On current form, no.
Yeah, I think when you look at current form, I think you look at. I would be relying back on players, Tony, like Daniel X and the Daniel drivers that have been there and done that. Like, I've worked with those 2 boys before, and I know they're winners. Like, that they want to win. They wouldn't be happy with where they're sitting right now, and I guarantee you they'll be doing everything possible, as they were on the weekend, to try and wrestle that momentum back. So I don't think that, we're talking about it now, and it's sounding like that those games are games we expect them to lose, but at the end of the day, if you go into that mentality with, we're expected to lose, a lot of the time it probably works in your favor, where, okay, well, we're expected to lose. We've got nothing to lose. Let's go out there and throw punches. And all of a sudden you end up 2-0 up. It then flips it where, okay, well, how do we win? And that's where you rely on that sort of experience to get them across the line. So nothing would surprise me in the next 4 weeks. And yeah, I think there's a lot to play out in an early young season. So.
Liam and Nathan, I'll throw it open to you guys. Do you have a question for Chris?
I'll just have a quick question. With the possible expansion, talking about possibly 4 new teams, 4 new clubs coming in over the next probably 6 years, 7 years, whatever it is. Having a second club in Brisbane, and considering the amount of players that you have come through the academy and the amount of successes that you had, would a second Brisbane club be able to offer more how do you see that happening in regards to offering more opportunities to the youth players?
I would love to see, Liam. I would love to see more Queensland talent stay in Queensland. I think in a lot of places and a lot of people I talk to, all of our good talent is going down to Victoria, and I would love to see them stay local. Like it's not just within the Brisbane Roar program that we develop players. There's a lot of good players that have come from Lions, Knights, Power that have all gone south in the off season. I would love to see them be given the opportunity to stay in Queensland and show what they can do. I think. We're a big enough state for that. Unfortunately, when I was playing, the North Queensland Fury didn't survive. I think that would have been a good breeding ground for a lot of young players. It was a climate which helped you work. It was a climate which probably made me the fittest I ever was as a footballer. It was physically demanding, but I knew when teams came up there and they really struggled. So I think it's important that happens. If you look at the Melbourne Derby, I think it only helps grow the game in Queensland, which is what we're all here to do. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I think also too, when we lost the Mackay team at the start of the season, I think there was a lot of outcry there, wasn't there, that a lot of that North Queensland, Central Queensland kind of talent was going to be lost now because they didn't have that representation in the top Queensland leagues. So there's definitely a call for it in Queensland for there to be a second professional club at Brisbane Roar's level anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I think just trying to get that right where to base that, Liam, I think is the important one. It's at the end of the day, is it in Southeast Queensland? It's obviously the biggest catchment area. It's sort of where everything's happening, but we trying as Brisbane Roar and as our youth team. Like we went up to Townsville 2 years ago to do our pre-season. That was off the back of our most successful season in the NPL. But I think when you talk about young footballers and having a winning mentality and knowing how to win, I think that was a big part of our successful season. We went up there, players played 2 games in 5 days, which was pretty mental at the time. But they probably moved out of their comfort zone more than what they ever have, and the season they continue to grow and continues to develop, and we just need to try and find that happy medium more often. There's a lot of good players in Queensland, and it's a big state, but we owe that to the game to continue to develop it.
Got to be Gold Coast United, right, Nathan?
Yeah, I was just about to say it's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it? That the Gold Coast has got to be the next Queensland professional team, and we can laugh about what happened before, but there's a reason. I think the AFL came out this week and said GWS and the Gold Coast, they don't see it as a now; it's a generational thing. Putting teams in Australia's fastest-growing city, and that's. To use David Gallop's words, fish where the fish are, which they got wrong. But, I suppose I suppose the light shining back on our game that we actually don't have the money to be able to put into something that's not going to work now, which unfortunately has been our game's problem for a long, long time, that, we don't have the money to put in now. And I'm sure, Chris being as diplomatic as he needs to be, but that's really the Roar Academy not having their juniors now, the 13s to 18s, is probably a short-sighted thing around costs and, whatever else happened politically and all those types of things. But unfortunately, we don't have that long-term view because we can't afford to. So if it doesn't work now, we potentially lose that avenue in the future. And Chris being at the Fury at the time as well, and losing them and those types of things were unfortunate for young players in Queensland. And I wonder, and I suppose my question for Chris is around, every time there's an underage Australian team selected, you have a look, see how many Queenslanders are in there. And I think it's probably, at its lowest levels for a long time. I could be wrong, but it just seems that we don't have that, and whether that's because we've only got one professional team in the whole state, so they're not linked to those academies and those types of things, I don't know. But just that it seems like we don't have an equal representation for the amount of players we've actually got in the state.
Yeah, it definitely hurts. I think every time, Nathan, you do look at it, it hurts as what is supposed to be the leading program, in Queensland, and you don't have any Queenslanders in there. I think there's probably one or two things that are behind that, but if we look at sort of what we can control at the moment, I've been on the phone, or lucky enough to be on the phone to Brad Maloney, the coach of the under-17s, this week, and we've been speaking about young players, in Queensland. He's due to name a squad in a couple of weeks, and we're hopeful that a couple of Queenslanders can get an opportunity. But it's trying to, Football Queensland and the Brisbane Roar have been working hard over the last sort of couple of months to try and develop more elite games and those sorts of things where we can show Football Australia and we can show the national teams how good a young talent we have here. But it is difficult. Will it be a generational thing? I hope not, because we've got a lot of good young players right now that I think can impact national teams, but are unfortunately being looked over. So I think it's probably everyone getting together and taking pride, a little bit of a hit to go, okay, well, we need to step back and work together to do what's in the best interest of the best young players here in Queensland. Otherwise, unfortunately, they get overlooked, and the state hurts as a whole, because if you're looking at that and you're going, okay, well, let's talk about expansion. If you're not really having many players in youth national teams, you're probably going, okay, well, is that an area which we target? I would like to think so, and but I know if I was looking at expanding and there weren't many players coming from a state that contributed to the national teams, I'd probably be questioning if that was the right area to go to. But yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful.
Chris, is Warren Moon still at the club?
No, mate, no. I've spoke to Mooney a couple of times. It's obviously unfortunate sort of what's happened, but he's a great mate of mine. He was a great mentor during his time coming through. We worked at Churchy together, and obviously the Raw together for quite a bit. And it's unfortunate which sort of happened, and we continue to kick on. He's supportive of our program and the young players here. He loves seeing them getting opportunities, and it's great to see sort of a couple of our boys went into first team training with Nick this week. So, we continue to keep pushing them. I'm a big believer, and there's a lot of good players in our academy. They just need opportunities. So, we'll continue to provide that as early as sort of tomorrow night when we play Knights in the Cup. I think there's probably 3 or 4 young players that we'll give opportunities to that I'm excited to see. And I think, on another thing while we're here, I think the Kappa Cup has been a massive endorsement from Football Queensland. I think it's a good competition which teams can, decide how they want to play that. I think, if you want to go out to win it, there's another sort of trophy on the line. If you want to go out and give players opportunities to young players that deserve it, that you can't really, give during the regular season because you've got other priorities, I think that's probably an option. But it does give us an opportunity to do that, and I'm excited to see, a couple of our young lads go around on Friday night against Knights.
Chance of progressing?
Sorry?
Can you progress if you win?
I think I think we can put a bit of pressure on Knights. I think Knights and City are undefeated teams at the moment. We obviously lost to City 1-0 in the first round. So for us, it's solely about giving opportunities to young players who deserve it. I think our full concentration this year is on the league, and it has to be. I think, I've made that quite clear to everyone that the league is of utmost importance to us this year, and the players that will get opportunities will get opportunities in the Cup, and if they're good enough in the Cup, then they'll continue to get them in the league. So, that's sort of, our stance on it, my stance on it this year.
Strategy that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think it's just.
All right, guys, let's wrap up the show there. We should probably talk about the other 90-odd teams that are somewhere in this pyramid. Let's talk about the Gold Coast. Nathan, I'm going to bring you in here, mate. Your league kicked off on the weekend, and the FQPL, South Coast FQPL 3 has been going for a few weeks now. Tell us about the competition so far.
Yeah, so FQPL 3, I think they're up to around round 3 that they've had, or round 4. It must be 4 rounds in. So we got delayed. We had 11-team comp, and then 1 team pulled out, so back to a 10-team. So we got delayed a few weeks, which made it hard for pre-season. But yeah, QPL 3 South Coast, Rubina look like they're a team that are going to probably walk away with it. They have some quality. I know they have one of Chris's ex-players down there. They've got Lockie Johnston, who is a good young striker. You know, he'll score 40 or 50 goals, to be honest. They'll have weeks where they'll probably put quite a few on some teams, and he's a goal scorer. His dad played down on the coast for a long time and was a goal scorer. So he'll score goals if he's there for the whole year. He'll bang a heap in. That league, beyond that, it's probably a league where most teams can beat each other on a day. There's been some interesting results. I know Palm Beach won some games and then they got beat at the weekend by Runaway Bay. Tweed beats someone at the weekend as well. You know, it's apart from Narang, that you're probably looking at a league where teams will, you know, if they're not on, other teams will upset them. And it's probably going to be a logjam in the middle of the table, with maybe Southport probably the closest to Robina. But they have played already and Robina won that. So quite convincingly in the end, I think. So, yeah, Lee at Robina will probably be, the team that's there at the end. And I think if they get promoted to FQPL 2, you know, you're probably looking at, a much weakened Gold Coast team. You know, do we have Gold Coast Knights, Gold Coast United, Surface, Magic, Broadbeach and Robina out of the league? It sort of becomes, well, basically it's it'd be a pretty even league, I'd say, with the better players playing in those Brisbane comps. So, yeah. And we did start Friday night. So our league started Friday night. We played against Legends and had a 4-4 draw. And then there was some, interesting results in our league. So I think Queensland Football Culture put out their predictions, and I think they put the curse on everyone again. And first round was completely different to what they had in their ladder predictions.
So you've got Pimpamar in your lead this season. That's got to be the big game for Ormeau this year, right?
Yeah, it is. And they had a good result against Magic. Magic have got a team in our league who've got some older players that have played at a pretty decent level. And they beat them 3-0 on the weekend when people maybe assumed they might not win a game this year. Closest team at Derby, but I'd say probably our game this weekend against Pack Pines could be one which is close as well. That probably means a little bit more in terms of the league and where things are going to finish up at the end of the season. But yeah, it's always nice to have those local rivalries to help create excitement and keep getting boys up for different games for different reasons.
Happy with your squad this year?
Yeah, we've got a good squad. Like anyone at this level, I think there's an importance on getting a good bunch of players who, all buy into why we're here, and, amateur footballers who enjoy coming, playing as hard as they can, training as hard as they can, but, getting along off the park and, trying to, almost a pretty unique situation, if you like. It's only 10 years old, a newish area in terms of development. There's a new clubhouse going in here middle of this year, so we'll be out of action for a little bit with clubhouse happening probably June, July school holidays. It's a modular build, so it shouldn't take long. 6 weeks, they tell me. It's exciting. We've got some good players. Got a couple of Brazilian lads who have really bought into the lifestyle, and they're mates with the lads that aren't Brazilians. And we've got this lad, he's fit as, and he comes at the end of the session, he'll run laps, and then he'll be doing push-ups and crunches and that. And he does it with no shirt off. So I think there's a few mums that hang around with their kids a little bit later. And it's, I suppose what you do it at this level for the kids, follow him around do the laps with him, and then they got their shirts off doing crunches. And I looked over after training the other week and went, you know, what a moment. You know, yeah, we're not NPL players, we're not A-League players, but we're still, you know, creating something where kids aspire to be what they see, you know. And if they're, you know, a fit, healthy young lad running around a pitch playing football on a Saturday and kids come to watch that, surely it helps instill that lifelong love of the game and help them to become the next generation of players that want to play.
Nathan, can I ask you about the South Coast women's competition?
Yeah, you can. What do you want to know about the Knights?
Well, I mean, Knights and Palm Beach have both got incredible teams, right? Is anyone going to match them?
Oh, look, I don't know too much about it. It's a fledgling league. It's not really, I suppose Rabina and Broady being in FQPL 2 and FQPL 1 has sort of been where players have gone the last few years. So I think they've started to filter back down as younger ones sort of push into that game. So, yeah, I did hear a report the other week that when Knights played Runaway Bay, it probably wasn't the best environment in terms of the crowds. Not really, you know, I think it was 16-0 to the Knights or something like that. But yeah, the crowd, I think, at Runaway Bay were reported as yelling out some things that probably weren't nice around the situation. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how they go and whether they keep their players for the season winning games by that many. I don't know too much about Palm Beach. I know that they've got a couple of Gold Coast United girls. But is that only a couple? I don't know about the rest of their squad.
It is only a couple, but they are significantly good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So, Nathan, I know you're at the club. You're desperate to have your dinner, so I'll ask you one more question, and you're free to go. We'd love you to hang around, but you're free to go if you like. The B League, I haven't got your opinion. Gold Coast Knights, Gold Coast United, you think one, you think none, you think both?
Yeah, interesting. And I suppose, you know, do we have, what then happens to the NPL? You know, so if it'd be great to have more Gold Coast teams at different levels of the game, more opportunities for young players to get that showcase, I suppose. Obviously Gold Coast Knights would have, you know, the funding and the you know, the last few years in the NPL to be able to show for what they've done and their ability to put well-funded teams together, and their facilities they've done a massive renovations of and those types of things. Gold Coast United, look, you know, as much as I'd love them to be back at that level, I would imagine that they maybe don't have the same resources that the Knights would. But who knows? Who knows? They might have some people in the background. I know that Danny Marr, who was there as chairman, has left in the last sort of 12 to 18 months to head up a Gold Coast A-League bid, where they do have some backers and significant funding for an A-League bid. And that's not obviously linked to either Knights or United. It's a whole of Gold Coast bid. So, yeah, interesting space. And look, if we got an A-League team back again, great. If we got a B-League team, great. And then we had an NPL league team, few FQPL1, few FQPL 2. Then you're looking at, there's opportunities for players to play at different levels. And I think that's important as, you know, a city that's going to be, you know, the size it's going to be in the next 10 to 20 years. That's important. So, yeah, I suppose that's sitting on the fence a little bit, Darren. But, yeah, look, a team would be nice for that opportunity for players.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, let's very quickly turn our attentions to the Sunny Coast Leagues. Noosa Lions are on top. That's a throwback to a few years ago. Coolum are the only undefeated team having played one game less. Nambour Yandina are also on 6 points. In the women's, it's Maroochydore and Woombye leading the way. I believe Kev Alderdice last week predicted that those two teams were going to do well. And let's move on from there. In the FQPL 3 Metros, Pine Hills. Tony, 3 from 3.
We struggle on the weekend. Our game on the weekend got abandoned. Now, can I just ask, if the game kicks off at 5 p.m. and you have an injury, do you still have 15 minutes to get an ambulance there, or do you have to wait, or can you wait longer?
I have no idea.
I've seen games being delayed for 40 to 45 minutes. Now on Saturday, within 15 minutes, the referee said, that's enough, 15 minutes, we're out, get the SPA and have a beer, see you later.
I was at a cup game last week at Carina, and a UQ player, the UQ goalkeeper, actually went down with breathing issues. And I believe he was on the field. It felt like about 20 minutes before the ref actually went, come on, time to get him off and get the ambulance.
But did he continue the game after that?
Continue the game, yes.
So whether our guy even went down, called it off, as soon as the ambulance just got there and the game was off.
Really?
He called it off earlier. Which is interesting. That's why I want to check the rules.
Did the players stay on the field? Was it up to
He originally told them to stay on the field. They all stuck around. They're having their water bottles and around there. And then all of a sudden he blew a full-time whistle. That's it. Yeah. And the ambulance was basically around the corner.
Okay. If the player is staying on the field and the ambulance has to come on the field, I think that's one of those circumstances where they call the game off. But if they can get the player off the field, and obviously then they can continue because the player's not on the field. Chris, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, well, it's been an interesting year for that, because I read somewhere that there's been a lot of, or probably more than usual, injuries of that sort of nature at the start of the season, which is never nice to hear. But even if I was watching the Lions game on the weekend, and obviously the lights went out, and I was talking about another code, but they were off the ground for, I think, 15, 20 minutes. And it's probably the impact that then does have on the team coming back onto the pitch. I think it's probably down to the referee and their discretion as to sort of what impact it does have on a result. But you'd like to see games played as much as possible, both as at the expense of the welfare of a player. I think you sort of use common sense there. But yeah, it's never nice to see.
The player had a dislocated elbow. So they didn't move him, so they kept him on the ground. And then he kept the players on the field, and then by the time the ambulance came in, he just decided, was after 15 minutes, they called it off. But results-wise, we're going fairly well. We've just got to keep our heads on and keep going.
Yep.
Got Virginia this weekend. That'll be an interesting one. We'll go from there.
FQPL 4, Brisbane Knights, AC Carina and Moggle are the 3 undefeated teams. FQPL 5, Ridge Hills and Barden Latrobe are the 2 undefeated teams. Liam, you got something to say about the FQPL 2 and 1 leagues?
Well, it's FQPL 1. I think there's a few surprise packets in there. Look, Wolves doing well. They're undefeated. They've got 3 wins, 2 draws. They're doing exceptionally well. I think with the crappy years that Wynnum had last year, I think they'll be very, very happy with where they are, and the continued break-ins of that for that ground there is just, it sucks, man. The amount of break-ins I've had over the last couple of weeks, it's just ridiculous. But look, Service Paradise Apollo got their first win on the weekend against Western Pride, so they'll be very happy to finally get their first 3 points. They are a game behind with Sunshine Coast for a game that was abandoned there a few weeks ago when storms hit the coast there. Look, Eagles and Mitchelton stuck at the bottom there. No wins. If they got to start showing some form soon. Otherwise, that could very much be very much where they're going to end up. But Logan Lightning, look, undeservedly, sorry there, Chris, but they undeservedly came down last season. But look, they're they're sitting pretty. Ace again, yeah. Strikers 4th, so they're in the top 4. They're in the again. We're only like 5 games in, and so I think we're starting to find a bit of a level now. We're starting to find where clubs are. I know Pride have got a number of injuries to their first team players, so they're kind of playing with a half a first team at the moment, but some of the under 23s coming up. So it kind of explains kind of where they are. But after they had a couple of great results against Ace and Strikers in the Kappa Pro Series, they haven't done that well in the league so far with only 1 win, so they won't be kind of happy where they are. But they're kind of stuck with some of the players that are injured there. So look, I think it's all kind of leveling itself out now. We're starting to see a few results there with clubs, and but what was the other league you want to ask about? What was the other one? FQPL. Okay. Well, just keep talking.
Free reign, Liam.
What about the MPL results?
Look, I think we're working our way up, aren't we tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all over the shop, to be honest.
we are. Look, FQPL 2, Broadbeach are very happy where they are. Top of the league, Magic United, it's St. George, Willawong, all pretty much predicted that this is where they'd be. My poor crosstown rivals there with Ipswich Knights, look, they're in a world of hurt at the moment, and I'm a big Ipswich football fan, as you know, and Pride's my club, but I like to see that all the Ipswich clubs doing their best and doing well. And for the history that Ipswich Knights have in Queensland football, to see them bottom of the league in the 3rd tier, that's really sad, man. I want them to be doing better. They probably want to be doing better, but they need to find some. They need to start finding some form soon. So yeah, but that's pretty much it. There was the only derby I think we got in the old Ipswich football is FQPL 3 with Ripley, Bulls and Springfield. So that's 4. So three's Western Spirit.
Yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself. We've already talked about those leagues, so let's just move on.
We've got Western Spirit on Good Friday, I think.
Yeah, look, some interesting things came out with Western Spirit. I read tonight that where their ground is located is near where there was some badly flood affected houses along Eden Street there at Goodna. So I was reading somewhere in the local rag today that all those houses are being bought back by the government, and that land, I believe, some of that land is going to Western Spirit, so they'll be able to expand their facilities and their fields onto those houses that have been bought back. So that's some good news out of some bad news.
Pippin Park's going to expand.
Well, that's the way I read it. But of course, what happens in a paper and what happens in reality are 2 different things, aren't they? So
good stuff.
Yeah.
Chris, we might ask you about the ladder at the moment. Gold Coast United, Lions, and Sunny Coast Wanderers top of the league. You wouldn't have thought that, would you?
Yeah, no, I don't think you would have, but I think I've said it probably the last 2 years. I think Gold Coast United have got the makings of a good squad. They just sort of haven't clicked. They've had a few injuries at key moments and a couple of things not going their way. But when we went there round 2 and they obviously had their really, really good win against Knights in the derby round 1, we were sort of going there and going, okay, well, it's damage, mitigation there, but we were happy enough to come away with a point. I think if you're a side going there this season, I think it's going to be a tough place to go and get results. That's the same with Arnie and his boys on the sunny coast. I think on the coast they're a very, very difficult team to play and difficult team to beat, but they're deservedly where they are. Watching the Gold Coast Knights game against them on the weekend, and Lions continue to power on. So I think with momentum, a lot of other sides will continue to push their way up. But the next probably 4 or 5 weeks, I think, will determine sort of where things are at. But as I said before, I think you get a couple of wins together this year, and all of a sudden you pull yourself out of the shit, or you put yourself in the shit. So it's an interesting year ahead.
There's some big sewage pipes being formed at a couple of clubs, isn't there?
What's that? Sorry, Tony?
There's a couple of big sewage pipes being formed at a couple of clubs at the moment.
Yeah, well, that's football, right? Though, like as Liam said before, like last year was was never a position that I envisaged or I wanted to be in or I want to be in again. I think I didn't really have a good feel for me last season, sort of the way everything finished up, and we obviously learned a lot from last year. We obviously gained a lot of experience in a lot of our young boys last year, so we're better prepared this year. But at the end of the day, it's a long season. It's a tough season. It's a season which takes a lot mentally to get players from week to week. You've got cups in there. I suppose the fortunate thing for us is that we don't have the Australia Cup, or it doesn't affect our team as it would, other NPL clubs. Yes, we might have players, and hopefully we'll have young players that are given an opportunity in that competition should we be in it. But that's something we don't have to sort of focus too much on. We can focus on the league and the Kappa Pro Series, and hopefully that's something to which we can manage.
Chris, take us inside the heads of your players when they are taking on the stars of the competition, and they've probably only got 3 or 4 games under their belts in this league. Are they plucky? Are they scared?
Yeah, well, it's different characters, Darren, probably approach things differently. Like I like to tell the boys to approach things with no fear and be brave. And at the end of the day, what's the worst thing to happen? You lose or you get beaten by one of the very good players. I think, over the last 2 years, I've said to all the players that I've worked with that if you're not in the top 5 players in the league in your position, then there's no point asking whoever's the head coach of Brisbane Roar for an opportunity, because there's better players out there elsewhere. So if they're young, they've obviously got a lot of work to do, a lot of learnings to do, but we can't disrespect the NPL Queensland, because it's a tough competition. There's a lot of good ex-pros there. There's a lot of good coaches within the league that tactically, get things, very, very right. So, we try and instill a confidence within our players that, they can play freely. But there is, as you mentioned at the start, there is a structure that we like to play within. I mean, at weeks, it's probably going to look a little bit more defensive than others, but, that's probably a credit to the teams we're playing against. Like if you want to go, punch for punch with Mike Tyson and you're a featherweight, you're going to get knocked out. So we have to be in fights longer than what we are on the ground. And, we'll continue to try and instill that into our boys to be smarter, young, aspiring professional footballers. So.
I've watched the last 2 games that you've played, and the kids don't look to be intimidated. They don't seem to be, no.
Well, I think that's a lot to do with last year, Tony. Like, last year, our boys learned a hell of a lot. We played inexperienced players last year. That I'm not saying that they weren't good enough, but they just needed the exposure to, a men's competition with some good some good players, experienced players that are playing against week to week. Like a lot of, you take the safety net of relegation away, and a lot of our boys haven't played in games like that have meant so much. Like I was lucky enough or unlucky enough to play in one when I was down in Victoria, a relegation battle, and I was lucky enough to get on the right side of that. But a lot of our boys haven't had to play without that safety net, so I think that's something that last year taught us a hell of a lot of lessons. But as I said, it doesn't sort of leave too good a feeling knowing that sort of the outcomes were the outcomes. But we've got 20, 30 games into some boys that wouldn't have got any last year if that safety net would have been pulled away. So, we just got to keep building, continue to keep developing our list and retaining our list and, being competitive for years to come, because, my thoughts are the NPL program for the Brisbane Roar has to maintain that. If we don't have that, it's very difficult for us to attract the best young players in Queensland to not the best product in Queensland. So, while I'm here, we'll be doing everything possible to try and maintain that and continue to develop good young players, which I think we can do. And if you're developing winners that need a little bit of craft in football, well, they get that by training with the A-League team. They get that by A-League exposure and getting found out at the next level. So, it's an exciting time, Tony, to be honest.
Young Brownlee looks to good at 15 or 16.
Yeah, mate.
I just hope he doesn't get burnt in a team that gets beat every week.
Yeah, and there's a couple of stories like rolling out there, like Luke Broderick's probably another one. Like I think there was probably 11 boys from the squad we initially went to Football Queensland with in regards to our list for this year that we wanted to keep, but they obviously have their different stories as to wanting to play senior men's football, and that's something which I'm never going to guarantee anyone in my squad. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you've done. Like, you're only as good as your last performance. And I'll keep going back to it. 2 years ago, we had a squad that was continuing to be prepared to fight every training session every week to play. There were some hard luck stories of players missing out of big games for us, but that was the nature of our squad. It was, 2 players pretty much for every position. The 23s were stepping up and performing when they needed to. And if you didn't perform, unfortunately, you missed out on your opportunity. So that's something which, some good young players have had to leave our club, unfortunately, to do. Ryland's one of them. Luke Broderick's probably another one at strikers that has started the season really well. And I'm delighted that he has. It's something which, my door's never closed to them potentially returning. At the end of the day, it's another pathway. But if they choose the pathway that they're currently on and continue to go the direction they're currently on, there's no reason why they can't make it without our program. But it's sad to see, players like that go, like we mentioned before about, a second club in Queensland or a second, professional opportunity. Like, they're young kids, which, you throw your hand up and you go, well, that's a perfect, sort of test case that we do deserve another club.
All right. We might end the show there. Chris, I've got one last question for you. What would you take more pride in? Raw Youth winning the league and have no players go on to play in the A-League, or one Socceroo? You produce one Socceroo that has a successful career.
I think you'd say the Socceroo, Darren. I mean, I love winning things. Like, I didn't win enough in my career, and I wish I would have, done more to win more. But, at the end of the day, if we're a club that's producing a Socceroo, it means we're doing what we need to in our environment, which is producing good young footballers. I think, once you produce one, I think, all of a sudden you start to produce more. So, if we produce one, we're obviously still in the league. Then it doesn't mean we're relegated or we're not winning. But yeah, that one Socceroo would be amazing. And within the young talent we've got, Kai True and Jordan Courtney, I don't think we're sort of too far away with that, or we're on the right path. So yeah, it's been good so far.
And that
Another
was the
question.
correct answer.
Another question. How long do you reckon Warren Moon before he's back in NPL or A-League?
Sorry, Tony, I missed that one. Sorry.
How long do you reckon your mate Mooney will pop up at an NPL club or another A-League club? Obviously, there's some NPL clubs that will be looking for coaches soon if things don't change.
Yeah. As a coach, you're always hungry. You want to coach. Like, I love being in our environment. I love coaching every day. When I'm on the pitch and I'm working with our players, it's fantastic. Like, I have to kick them off the pitch, Tony, because they want to keep working. Like, they want to be out there. I think if he finds the right environment to step into, I would love to see him back. I think it's just trying to find that. Like, I wouldn't say it's been the easiest of times for him. So, if he does come back, I welcome that. And yeah, having people like that coming back into our game, I think, is only a good thing. It pushes the quality. It pulls people back from interstate. And I would love to see that. Like, if I envisage, football in Queensland over the next sort of couple of years, I would love to see us have more pull to retain a lot of the talent that we send down south or moves down south for footballing opportunities. Like, if we had that in our league and we maintain that, I think our league would be on par, if not better than what they're sort of attracted to at the moment. So that's something that we've all got to work towards, and it'll only help our push for bigger and better things if we can keep those people in our game in Queensland.
All right, I think this is going to be our longest show of the year. So, Chris, it's been absolutely fascinating having
the
you.
most tame one. We're not going to get into any trouble tonight.
No, definitely.
Well, some of us won't anyway, Mr. Olympic man over there.
Mate, you know what concerns me the most? I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
All right, let's talk about that off camera.
It's bloody dark and it's getting darker.
Let's end the show. Chris, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you to Nathan Mulhearn, who hung around after training. Hopefully he's enjoying his dinner right now. This has been the Village Law SEQFC preview show. Probably not going to do a show next week because we'll be cup tied, maybe during the school holidays. See how we go. Anyway, we'll see you soon.